Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Intesar-e-Wilayat Ch-12. Address number 12. The Lesson of Karbala. O Nasreen Wali-ul-Asr, we are repeatedly reiterating this point. If we make a comprehensive and a brief definition of true faith, we can only say that true faith is a collection of positive attitude towards our Wali-ul-Asr. If we look in terms of attitudes, we see two groups of people. One, those persons who keep some attitude towards someone, that is fileen or subjects. Two, those persons with whom some attitude is kept, that is maf'uleen or objects. Now this is the textual reality that the Holy Prophet has commanded his people. Before departing, I am going to leave two important things for you. One is the book of God, and second is my sacred progenies. In this matter, the wise and the pious people perceive that the book of God does not stand for the Holy Quran, but it stands for eloquent Quran, Quran-e-Natiq, that is, the Wali-ul-Asr. They have apprehended the meaning out of the above-mentioned verses, explaining that here is the mention of two things, out of which one generally refers to the whole sacred progenies of the Holy Prophet. And more importantly, the Holy Quran cannot enjoy premiership over the sacred progenies, but out of them, only Wali-ul-Asr can enjoy this premiership, because giving priority to the book of silence over the eloquent book of Allah is also against the style of eloquence and respect. It also goes against the faith and discernment. There is one more thing, that the one who has said, the book of Allah is sufficient for us, in response he was ousted, saying, which shows that the book of Allah does not stand for the Holy Quran. Otherwise, he had already called the foremost thing enough for him. He could be convinced if he had acknowledged the greatest thing, he might have admitted little things, that is, the sacred progenies, but could not be scolded. Many such arguments are put forward by those who are associated with wisdom and discernment. But here we are talking of faith which is based on nusra. That's why we will take the general translation which is normally related. We are going to leave two most important things, the book of God and the sacred relations of the Holy Prophet. If we look critically at this command, we come to know that three persons have been mentioned here. One who left his deposit, that is the Holy Prophet. Two, those things which are being left as deposits. Three, and those people who are emphasized to hold these two things firmly. If they held these two things, they would never digress from the true path. Now it proves that for those people who are ordered to hold the above-mentioned two things firmly, there is the likelihood that they would digress from the true path. On the other hand, the two things, that is, the Holy Quran and the sacred relations, about which it is ordained to hold firmly, have the capability to the full to provide the right direction to the seekers. After perceiving this, how can someone claim that there is no difference between the followers and the sacred relations? As the public says that in his will, the Holy Prophet has emphasized the Holy Quran and the sacred relations and forced the followers to hold these two things firmly, the reward of which would be eternal guidance. Here the Holy Prophet has mentioned the sacred relations with the Holy Quran and not with the followers. Now the sacred relations can be called similar and parallel to the Holy Quran, but in any case, the sacred relations can never be called similar to the followers. And if the followers aspire to be similar to the sacred relations, they must first endeavor wickedly to be equal to the Holy Quran. After that, they may be called similar to the sacred relations. If jinn and humans together cannot bring the example of the Holy Quran, How can a so-called book-learned religious scholar with his superficial thinking can bring the example? Because the discussion is going the other way, so I come back to my main topic. Now let's not deviate from the course of discussion and return to the topic under discussion. I was saying that the followers of humanity were ordained to stick to the sacred family so that they might not be misled. Friends, when we evaluate humanity and pass it through the process of natural division, humanity seems to be divided into two equal parts. One section consists of men, while the other one consists of women. Similarly, if we divide all the characters in Karbala into two equal parts, we have the same natural division of these characters too. That is, 1 men, 2 women. If we consider these characters concerning their ages, which we call technical division, these two parts are further divided into 6 parts. 1 old men, 2 young men, 3 children, 4 old women, 5 young women, 6 girls. Friends, now we shall not discuss men, rather we talk about the lesson which was delivered for women and is found in the book of Karbala. Friends, if we classify women with the referential prospect, they do have 4 kinds of identification of relations. A woman is either a mother or a sister or a wife or a daughter. All other references like being a daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, parental grandmother, maternal grandmother, aunt, father's sister, husband's sister, brother's wife, paternal granddaughter, maternal granddaughter, brother's daughter, sister's daughter, paternal aunt, maternal aunt are subordinate to the above-mentioned 4 identifications. Some other similar relations emanate from the above-mentioned 4 basic relations. Friends, how strange it is that on the land of Karbala, all the relations were given proper representation, including old woman, young woman, girls, mothers, sisters, wives, daughters, daughters-in-law, mothers-in-law, paternal grandmothers, maternal grandmothers, maternal aunts, husband's sisters, brothers' wives, paternal granddaughters, maternal granddaughters, sisters' daughters, brothers' daughters, wives of father's young brother, wives of mother's brothers. All the possible relations with reference to woman have been beautifully represented. In fact, the courses of true faith and faith of Nusra were kindled by giving representation to all possible relations that may be generated till the day of judgment. Friends, if we look at the people according to their classes, we can trace a representation from all classes. Generally speaking, there are the 3 main classes of people. 1. Rich or ruling people, that is upper class people. 2. Poor or mediocre people, that is middle class people. 3. Slaves and maids, that is lower class people, because in that age, these people were branded as lower class people. Just observe that the women belonging to the above-mentioned 3 classes were given full-scale representation. In fact, in Karbala, there were women who belonged to the heads of tribes. Besides, poor and mediocre women and maids were also present there. All these women played their full-scale role, thus paving the way for future generations so that they might not face any hurdles in following the true path and doing Nusra for their Wali-ul-Asr. Here, it is important to note that among all these sections, both kinds of characters, including friends and enemies, were present. That is, if some rich people were among the virtuous women, some other rich people were also among the evil-minded men. And like friends, middle-class people were also among the enemies. Similarly, poor and helpless slaves and maids were also present among both friends and enemies. and people belonging to every section and class were delivering one lesson and offering one ideology. They were treating their Wali-ul-Asr specifically and were passing the consequences of their acts over to us. All of them were engaged in giving us the roadmap, no matter whether they were friends or enemies. But now, I want to talk about women because we have already had plenty of talk about men. Place of women in society. Friends, now the most important question arises: what is the place of women in society? First of all, we will reiterate that riches are sacrificed for the sake of life, and life is sacrificed for the sake of respectability and honor. If we examine this matter from a worldly point of view, the most precious asset of a human being is undoubtedly rendered as respectability and honor, for which a human finds it not only legitimate but also indispensable to sacrifice his wealth and life. Friends, you also know what is respectability and honor. It is either mother, sister, daughter, or wife. If you want to give a single label to all these relations, it would refer to as woman, because a mother, a sister, a daughter, or a wife is fundamentally a woman. It proves that the most precious asset of a human is woman, and every self-respecting man finds it not only desirable but also indispensable to sacrifice his life for his woman. Friends, some women complain that man does not give them their proper status and even does not apprise them or grant them freedom. Now, someone may ask such complaining woman, what might be the status higher than the precious life that man has already dedicated to them, because he finds it his first and foremost duty to sacrifice his life for the sake of the honor of his woman. The woman should be kind enough not to render the lives of her man valueless, because the man considered it his honor to sacrifice his life just for the sake of his woman. Similarly, a woman should also consider the value of her man and safeguard his life. She should secure her esteem from strangers and take care of her modesty. It's imperative for her to sacrifice her life for her chastity, with the consideration that man has already given her the utmost importance in the sphere of his life. Friends, to safeguard one's chastity is the greatest nusra a woman can offer, because the children of unchaste woman can never be branded as Nasr of the emperor of the age. So, the woman should safeguard their chastity at every cost, so that they can produce sacrificing Nasr who may earn honor for them in the world and hereafter. Friends, it's strange enough to find out that the very first role of a woman is that of a wife. Someone may object to it and say that woman is first a girl, then she grows young and gets married and becomes a wife and finally becomes a mother. So the first and foremost role a woman plays is of a girl, not of a wife. But this is the wrong approach, because the first woman who had descended on earth from heaven was Hazrat Hawa, and the first role assigned to her was neither of a girl, nor of a sister, nor of a mother, but of a wife. Here we take a start with the role of wives. Wives. Friends, as we see the basic conditions of wives, we come to know that they can be in 4 conditions, and after that their personal references are also included. Here are those 4 basic conditions. 1. Wife of a believer who herself is a believer. 2. Wife of a non-believer who herself is a believer. 3. Wife of a believer who herself is a non-believer. 4. Wife of a non-believer who herself is a non-believer. After the above-mentioned 4 conditions, the women have their personal and natural references, which are 6 in number. 1. Young wife. 2. Old wife. 3. Newly married wife. 4. Widow. 5. Wife having children. 6. Issueless woman. If we multiply all these references, secondarily, there are 24 kinds of wives, but if we go into minute details, their kinds increase in large numbers. In other words, the position of a wife is matchable with that of her husband. For example, if a husband is in power, 1. Wife of a disbeliever in power who herself is a believer. 2. Wife of a believer in power who herself is a believer. 3. Wife of a disbeliever in power who herself is a disbeliever. 4. Wife of a believer in power who herself is a disbeliever. 5. Wife, a believer, of a slave who is a believer. 6. Wife, a disbeliever, of a slave who is a believer. 7. Wife, a believer, of a slave who is a disbeliever. 8. Wife, a disbeliever, of a slave who himself is also a disbeliever. Similarly, there can be several kinds of wives. As we critically analyze the book of Karbala, we are surprised to know that all possible kinds of wives have been given proper representation and a crystal clear line of action for Nusra has been drawn for them. Here, I would not be able to present detailed conditions of all wives and would only mention them briefly so that you can observe how comprehensive and detailed is the lesson of Karbala. Hazrat Ali bin Mazahir's wife. Friends, Hazrat Habib ibn Mazahir's younger brother named Hazrat Ali bin Mazahir was also martyred in Karbala, and I have already mentioned that casualty while writing about the incidents that happened at the altar of Karbala. Here I want to relate something about his wife. When Karim-e Karbala ordered all his companions to leave him in the lurch, those who were willing left him. Karim-e Karbala ordered those who remained there in his service to harbor their families in some sheltered place. Then Karim-e Karbala ordered Hazrat Ali bin Mazahir to leave his wife at a nearby area where his tribesmen were inhabited. After taking instructions, as he came to his tent, his wife inquired if their reverend emperor has delivered some specific sermon. He told her the whole discussion in detail, including the orders regarding her transportation to a safer place called Bani Asad. On hearing this, that woman struck her head against the timber and said while weeping, "You take care of our modesty and privacy, but you did not even bother that the sacred daughters of the Holy Prophet are also accompanying us in this desert. As you cannot leave Karim-e Karbala, I am also determined to bear tyranny and oppression in the company of the sacred daughters of the Holy Prophet and will offer Nusra to them." History is witness that that woman remained there with the sacred family and delivered a message to all the women of the whole universe that it is imperative for the true followers who believe to stay with the members of the sacred family when they are in some critical situation or coping with some expecting hardship. Generally speaking, we must stand by our friends through thick and thin, and doing Nusra to the sacred family is indispensable for the believers, and being their companion in misery is true faith, and those seeking their own safety and convenience are excluded from the sphere of true faith. Zuhair bin Khan's wife. Friends, Hazrat Zuhair bin Khan has also been discussed in detail while writing about the incidents that happened at the altar of Karbala. Here, I prefer to relate only that part of the discussion which is related to his wife. Friends, when Karim-e Karbala, while on his way to Kufa, extended his invitation to Zuhair, he started reflecting on the matter. His wife, observing his confused state of mind, said to him, "Alas, the son of the Holy Prophet invites you and you are merely thinking about it when it is even illegitimate to think, which simply means unnecessary delay." After having been convinced by his wife, Hazrat Zuhair bin Qais was finally willing to do Nusra and told his wife that the act of Nusra for Karim-e Karbala would definitely result in the martyrdom which might happen after a month or even after a year. He set his wife free, saying she might move wherever she liked. On hearing this, she said that in that case she would prefer to do nusra to the reverent, pious, and sacred ladies of her master, her Wali-ul-Asr, and share their miseries. Friends, this woman has delivered us a lesson that a woman can play an important role in convincing their husbands for nusra, and even she has to do nusra after taking divorce from her husband. It would not be a loss for her. Hur bin Yazid, Riyahi's wife. Friends, Hazrat Hur bin Yazid Riyahi was made the leader of the brigade of 1,000 soldiers and was appointed to monitor the vast areas like Qadsiya and the desert of Iraq, but his wife was not accompanying him. It means his wife, brother, and son were absent in the incident of the destination of Zu Hasam and Shiraf. When Hazrat Hur appeared in Karbala, his brother and son took his wife and daughter to Karbala. On the night of Ashur, his decision to do nusra was being intercepted by the fact that his wife and daughter were also accompanying him, and their tents were adjacent to those of the enemies. If all men had gone to Karbala, all their women would be at the mercy of their enemies. When this very idea was constantly eating him up, his wife had solved the problem, saying why he was getting frightened to go to the battlefield by the time, especially when he knew that the honor of his wife can never be greater than that of the sacred daughters of the Holy Prophet. She advised him not to bother her and to do nusra to his Wali-ul-Asr instead, and she would also do nusra to her Wali-ul-Asr to the maximum. Further, she emphasized that he must remember her on the day of judgment. As a result of her persuasion, Hazrat Hur got ready to do nusra fearlessly. This woman herself serves as an everlasting message for us who sent her husband for nusra completely irrespective of her life, wealth, respect, and honor. On the other side, there were hundreds of wives in Kufa who had restrained their husbands from nusra of their Wali-ul-Asr by frightening them of the ruin of their homes and their indignity. There were also some people among Lashkar-e-Tawwabin who were hindered from going to Karbala by their wives because they had put their small children in front of them. These women had not let their husbands do nusra by fantasizing about the orphanhood of their children and their stumbling from door to door for help. Such women have delivered a message: if some woman would step into their shoes, she has to face the same consequences as those of the woman, the damned ones. Umar ibn Saad, the damned one's wife. Friends, Hazrat Hashim Markal was among one of the bravest Ansars of Amir-e-Kainat. I had already made a detailed discussion about him while giving his complete introduction. I had also mentioned that Hazrat Hashim Markal was Umar ibn Saad, the damned one's cousin, and one of his sisters were Umar ibn Saad, the damned one's wife. It serves as an example that a damned one has a wife who is a believer. But she was helpless. But at the time of Sham-e-Ghariba, both she and Hazrat Hur's wife, an example of being a believer and also the wife of a believer, took food in the sacred tents. They have also given us several lessons in perceiving and performing the duty of nusra in extreme compulsions. Allah, the damned one's wife. I have even described the events related to this woman. Here I would only refer to those events very briefly. As the news of Karbala's martyrdom reached this woman at home, she herself took divorce from her husband and left his home. This woman also served as a role model of a wife of a disbeliever, the damned one, but she herself was a believer. She has delivered a unique message to the woman: if they themselves cannot do something freely, at least they can break up with the enemy. Similarly, the wife of Shimr, the accursed one, is also another example of being a wife, the one who was a firm believer of a disbeliever. As she witnessed the sacred head of Karbala, she sacrificed her life, thus delivering a message to all the women that if the husband proves himself to be a tyrant, her wife must not avoid sacrificing her life. She proves that the privilege that Wali-ul-Asr enjoys is far superior to all the rights and privileges being enjoyed by the creatures of the whole universe. We see the role of a wife who took divorce from her husband, while the other one who preferred to be assassinated. Similarly, there is one specific woman who was the wife of the Pharaoh of the time, the accursed one, and used to live in the imperial palace in utter modesty. But when she found that the time for her Wali-ul-Asr's Nusra has approached, she came to the court of Syria while slapping violently on her face with her fully exposed, unbound hair, even in the presence of thousands of people, to the utter neglect of her honor and grace. Yazid, the accursed one, rushed to her and tried to cover her head with a piece of cloth. At this, she responded violently, saying that he seemed to bother much her modesty and grace, while being completely irrespective of the sacred and virtuous modesty and honor of the reverend daughters of the Holy Prophet. Friends, these are events of countless women lying before us. If we take 2 minutes to mention one of these events, it takes a lot of time to describe all of them. So I would like to advance while briefly referring to some of the wives. Number 6. Hani's wife had hindered Hazrat Muslim from killing Ibn Ziyad, the accursed one, merely to safeguard her home from tyranny, but could not remain safe. 7. Wahab bin Abdullah Kalbi's wife, who accompanied by her husband, sacrificed her life for Nusra, was a newly married bride and delivered us a lesson for Nusra. 8. Junada bin Kaab's wife, who while offering Nusra fought and came back to her tent after condemning several disbelievers to hell, played the role of a widow and delivered a lesson for Nusra. Hanzala bin Abu Sufyan, the damned one's wife, who intended to wound the sacred head of the oppressed spiritual leader in the bazaar of Syria, but was condemned to hell, played the role of an enemy. 10. Hazrat Misme Tamar's wife, who induced his tribesmen to acquire the martyr body of Hazrat Amir Muslim and made his shrine constructed. 11. Haris bin Urwa Tamimi, the accursed one's wife, who put her life at risk to save the lives of the princess and even sacrificed her own son, also delivered a lesson for Nusra. 12. Wives of Jewish and Christian leaders who induced their husbands to offer Nusra to the Karwan, which surrendered to the will of God. 13. Wife of Umar ibn Saad, the accursed one, also the sister of Hazrat Mukhtar, who frightened by her husband, could not protest but played an active role in getting her imprisoned brother released so that he might avenge for the oppressed spiritual leader. 14. The wives of Shiites could not offer other forms of Nusra except to pray, which they were doing day and night. Friends, keep this thing in mind that we don't intentionally mention the sacred woman representing oneness of God and prophethood. Otherwise, several such examples may be quoted from their lives, possibly in some next coming session. They had offered sacrifices for their supreme Wali, that is the Lord of glory, the benign, thus delivering us the lesson that we must also offer such types of sacrifices for our Wali-ul-Asr. Mothers. Friends, as I have already mentioned that the very first role assigned to a woman was that of a wife, and the second one was of a mother. If we look into different categories of mother, find the following ones. 1. Mother, a believer, of a son, a believer. 2. Mother, a non-believer, of a son, a believer. 3. Mother, a believer, of a son, a non-believer. 4. Mother, a non-believer, of a son, a non-believer. Basically, there are 40 kinds of mothers, but their numbers are multiplied if we go into minor details. Here, I would like to quote some examples briefly due to the short span of time. 1. The sacred mother of Abdullah bin Yaqtar, who sacrificed her old son. She was one such character who taught us the lesson of Nusra. 2. the sacred mother of Wahab bin Abdullah Kalbi, who sacrificed her newly married son and herself was martyred. She played the role of a widowed mother whose son and daughter-in-law was the only support for her longings. But she sacrificed both her son and daughter-in-law and set an example for Nusra. After the martyrdom of her son and daughter-in-law, she herself went to the battlefield for jihad, but Karbala ordained that jihad is not valid for her according to the laws of Sharia. On hearing this, she said, "O sacred master, do as you like with Sharia owned by your sacred maternal grandfather. Our faith is to sacrifice each and everything that belongs to us for yourself." 3. Mother of Khalf bin Muslim bin Osaja, who sent her innocent son to fight a battle. She has also been mentioned before as she played the role of a widow. 4. The mother of Umar ibn Junada sacrificed her son who was underage. She also played the role of a widowed mother. 5. The mother of Bilal bin Ashas, the accursed one, named Tua Khatun, is such a character who provided shelter to Hazrat Amir Muslim. She played the role of a mother, a believer, of a son who is a non-believer. She is an embodiment of warning, delivering a message that an erring father may rarely have a virtuous son. 6. Ibn Ziyad's mother, Marjana, condemned her son for having been punished for the atrocities which he had committed. Thus she played the role of a mother, a non-believer, of a son who is an enemy. The tale of this woman is also a lesson that only pure mothers' spotless sons may be included among the Nasreen. Sisters. Friends, one form of a woman is that of a sister. That is, a big role belongs to the sister. And there are basically 4 types of relationships regarding sisters. 1. Believers believing sister. The believing sister of a non-believer. The unbelieving sister of a believer. The non-believing sister of a non-believer. If we add basic references to these 4 cases, then many more cases come out, such as younger sister, young sister, old sister, newly married sister, widowed sister, sister with children, and childless sister. There are many more such cases. If you look at the corpses scattered on the land of Karbala, you will find brothers scattered all around in the dust and blood. And we will find sisters weeping on these corpses, but they will also be seen feeling proud of these sacrifices. The earliest examples of this are the sacred family that has taught us by sacrificing the most beautiful and sacred brother for the Most High, that is Allah Almighty, that no one should consider his sister or brother dear to his Wali-ul-Asr. And if a brother offers sacrifices to his Wali-ul-Asr and is martyred, his sister should feel proud of him. As we watch a scene of Vidai Maktal, when the queen of the worlds, Sharikat al-Hussein, visits the martyr body of her brother, in her lap is the innocent daughter of her martyred brother. And as she reaches the sacred martyred body, she says, once turning towards the sky, "O our Most High, that is Allah Almighty, accept this one of our small sacrifices." She has no remorse in her mind for her brother's sacrifice, but in a way, she is proud and satisfied with his sacrifice. This is the lesson she taught to the sisters of the universe, that they should also feel proud by sacrificing their brothers to their Wali-ul-Asr, because that's something to be proud of. In fact, true faith is the name of the set of positive attitudes that the sacred family has established with their Wali-ul-Asr, that is Allah Almighty, and provided us as a religion. We can also find all possible types of sisters in the sacred family. And in the story of Karbala, these sisters were also present in the form of Ansar and strangers. And for us, both types of sisters serve as an everlasting lessons for us. Friends, there are innumerable examples of sisters in the book of Karbala. Which sister should we refer to and which brother should we mention? Because we had to show you a way to think because when you study the subject in this regard, everything will come to light. Daughters. Friends, in the end, we are talking about daughters, and here too the situation is the same, that basically these forms of daughters can happen. 1. The believing daughter of a believer. 2. The believing daughter of a non-believer. 3. The unbelieving daughter of a believer. 4. The unbelieving daughter of a non-believer. If we add basic references to these 4 cases, then many more cases came out, such as younger daughter, young daughter, old daughter, newly married daughter, widow daughter, daughter with children, present daughter, and a distant daughter. There are basically 40 types of daughters, and their numbers increase in detail. Great daughter, Hazrat Durratus Sadaf. Friends, about 280 kilometers north of Damascus is a city called Halab. At the time, the sacred Karbala, completely submitted to the will of Allah Almighty, was moving to Damascus. The ruler of Halab was Abdullah bin Umar Ansari. He was one of the companions of Amir-e-Kainat and held the position of Hidayah during his reign. That is, the gifts that were given to Amir-e-Kainat as ruler and caliph were entrusted to him. During the reign of Amir-e-Kainat, he was made the ruler of Halab. Taking into consideration his honesty and trustworthiness, Muawiyah also allotted him to remain the ruler of Halab, because the people of Halab demanded that such a just ruler should not be deposed. Hazrat Abdullah bin Umar Ansari had immense devotion to the manifestations of patience, the bountiful Imam Hasn-e-Mujtaba. He used to send him 47 gold eggs, 47 silver eggs, and 40 sticks made of almonds as a gift, and he continued to do so until later. When Imam Mujtaba was offered the cup of martyrdom, Hazrat Abdullah bin Umar Ansari built his mausoleum in his house, covered it with silk and dibaj, and made it look like the tomb of the great emperor. They used to weep over it day and night, making it look like the tomb of their great emperor. It was their daily routine. One day, while he was sitting on his throne, the guard of his palace reported that a soldier of the Syrian army, who was also a messenger, was waiting for permission at the door to meet him. Hearing this, he dismissed his court and called the messenger inside. The accursed man presented a letter in his service and said, "Our army has martyred the son of the Holy Prophet in the field of Karbala and are taking his sacred family to Syria and is now staying at Kansarine. We will reach Halab by tomorrow. Now make arrangements for our wonderful reception and our food and accommodation as well." The sacred heads of Karim-e-Karbala and his holy family are also with us. The veiled sacred ladies representing monotheism and prophethood are also accompanying us. Therefore, you also have to arrange their accommodation yourself. As he read the letter, the news shocked him greatly, and he hurried to his home, weeping bitterly. He had a handkerchief over his eyes when he entered the house. When he entered the house, he was greeted by his young daughter, Hazrat Durratus Sadaf, and noticed that tears were flowing down from his father's eyes, and he was also holding a letter in his hand. She came forward and asked her father what was the letter and why he was crying. He handed her a letter, weeping and telling him the news of the martyrdom of Karim-e-Karbala and the arrival of the Karwan in Aleppo or Halab. On hearing this, Hazrat Durratus Sadaf said, "After the martyrdom of Karim-e-Karbala, there is nothing left in life." Then the princess said to her father, "Why are you weeping now? This is the time for the Nusra of the sacred family. You should not waste time in crying. You should do something." He said, "Daughter, our tribe is small, our number is small. In this case, if we fight, we will suffer a great loss. Our whole tribe will be ruined." The princess said, "Even if the whole world is ruined, we must offer Nusra for the sacred family and must get the sacred daughters of the queen of both the worlds released from the tyranny of the enemy." As she observed her father's mental depression, she said, "Father, now we will take up the matter ourselves and will not even ask you for help. You just sit at home." The princess then left her home and first went to the adopted sister named Naila Bibi and told her the whole story. In some narrations, her name was mentioned as Balia bin Bukair Khazraji. She also decided to vehemently offer the sacred ladies, clad in the veil of monotheism and prophethood, unconditional nusra. The city of Aleppo or Halab was inhabited by the Kharji and Aus tribes. These two princesses visited each of the homes of these tribes to persuade them to nusra and thus launched the nusra movement. From morning till evening and then throughout the night, these princesses preached the nusra of their Wali-ul-Asr in different houses and tried to persuade many people, and moving from one house to another gave this voice: "That man has useless prayers and fasting who stays away from the nusra of Karbala." They tried all night, but the men of both the tribes did not agree to offer nusra due to the fear of Lashkar-e-Sham, but 70 young girls of Khazraji and Aus tribes agreed to their nusra. To the north of the city of Aleppo or Halab was a city called Kansarine, and close to it there was another city called Mamura. The night these princesses were conducting the nusra movements, the tyrants of Kufa and Syria spent that night in Mamura. These girls, on the other hand, decided that if their men did not feel honored in offering nusra, what would happen? They will put on masculine clothes and then cover their faces with veils and will fight the army of Syria. Whatever happens will be seen then. As this news spread, some youngsters felt ashamed, also become supportive and joined the Lashkar offering unconditional nusra, and Hazrat Durratus Sadaf was made the commander of this army. And it was decided that whatever she ordered, they would obey it blindly. They planned to ambush them on the way from Aleppo or Halab to Mamura in the morning and attack them as the army of oppressors came forward. Thus they sat on the road. In those days, when the karma was driven at night, the drums and cymbals were constantly ringing with them, and many torch-bearers led the karma on dark nights. These girls and boys were lying in ambush on the road, armed with weapons, when suddenly the sound of drums came from afar, and at the same time torches started appearing. So Hazrat Durratus Sadaf alerted the whole army to be ready for attack. The Lashkar-e-Sham was just a short distance away when the cries of innocent children started ringing in their ears. So these girls also started crying. Then they seized as well and prepared for the attack. The karma passed in front of them and they were about to attack them. The princess of both the wars, Karbala's co-sister, in every act, gestured to them that they had children with them so they would not attack. When they were stopped from attacking for some other reason, they were left speechless. They also noticed that the Syrian army was more in number and they were less numerous. And their real purpose was not to sacrifice their lives, but to liberate the sacred ladies clad in the veil of monotheism and prophethood. So it was not right to attack. Near sunrise, the army of the oppressors reached in front of Bab al-Arba'in in Aleppo or Hal and saw that nobody came to greet them. There they came to Ruba, the green market ground, and stayed there. And sacred heads were hung on the spears. But none of the people of the city came to the aid of the oppressors. But Durratus Sadaf wanted somehow these people to stay here longer so that they might gather some ansars. So she and her adopted sister Balia, Naila bint Bakr, toured the area together and persuaded the people to offer nusra. But the required number of Lashkar could not be gathered and the oppressors left Aleppo or Hal. Eventually, this army of girls became frustrated with the boys. It was finally decided that if they could not free the sacred ladies of the Holy Family, hidden in the veil of chastity, from the enemies, then their lives at least would have been sacrificed in their nusra. Just with this intention, this army of girls, including some young boys, left Aleppo or Halb. About 40 kilometers south of Aleppo was a pasture called Marj-ul-Shartab. These girls, dressed in men's clothing, passed by in the form of an army and saw a shepherd grazing camels. He was leaving his camels in the pasture and sitting in a place crying. The girls realized that he could only be a Shiite. So Durrat-ul-Sadaf turned her horse towards him and went to greet him. When she asked the shepherd why he was weeping, he said in fear that he was the slave of Abu Asad Dalmi, the chief of Dalmi tribe. He further told her that the whole Dalmi tribe was camping nearby and they were all Shiites but can't do anything because of the shortage of Ansars. At that moment, Durrat-ul-Sadaf asked the slave to introduce her to his chief. The slave took her to Abu-al-Asr Dalmi, and when he was asked about Nusra, he wept and said that the army of Syria at the moment had 700 experienced warriors and their number was very small. Therefore, they are not in a position to fight. If they fight, they will all be killed. At that time, his wife was sitting behind his tent, listening to all these things, so she immediately called out to her husband, "Look how this young boy is ready for the help of the sacred family, and you as the leader of the nation are cowardly." The chief's wife considered Durrat-ul-Sadaf dressed as a man to be a boy. When his wife rebuked him, he said that he too was ready for Nusra. At that moment, Durrat-ul-Sadaf told them they were not the boys but the girls who had come out of their houses to sacrifice their lives in Nusra. On the 9th of Rabiul Awwal, according to the 7th September 680 AD, on Sunday, the Lashkar of the infidel spent the day in the city of Ardin, which is 40 kilometers south of Halab. When the army marched to the next destination on the night of December 8, the girls' army planned to attack them. When the Syrian army came in front of them, they attacked them by raising the slogan, Allahu Akbar. And the accursed Abdullah bin Ashas was at the forefront. He was the brother of Muhammad bin Ashas, the killer of Hazrat Amir Muslim. The accursed one was pierced with a spear and was thrown down from his horse and finally sent to hell. After that, Murad bin Shaddad, the accursed one, was damned to hell. In the same way, Durrat-ul-Sadaf condemned 11 accursed one to hell, and with it came the mighty battle. Just as Durrat-ul-Sadaf was drawing a spear from the chest of 11th accursed man, a young man on the horseback came and greeted her. "O our honorable queen, we congratulate you on your victory." She turned and saw a young man riding a horse with a long arm in his hand and was smiling at her. She asked who he was. The young man said, "I am Abu Muhammad Qasim bin Saad Khizai and have come to offer my Nusra." She said to Abu Muhammad, "You should hurry to protect the sacred ladies clad in the veil of monotheism and prophethood so that they might not be harmed." At that time, Abu Muhammad went and put the camels to one side and started guarding them. Then the queen of both the worlds, the co-sister of Karbala, prayed to them and said, "Go and offer our daughter Durrat-ul-Sadaf your Nusra." When he joined the battle again, her heart got very upset to see Abu Muhammad engaged in the battle and forgot to fight. Came to him and asked, "If the sacred ladies clad in the veil of monotheism and prophethood are safe?" As Abu Muhammad informed Durrat-ul-Sadaf of the whole situation, she thanked Abu Muhammad. At that time, the battle was at its height, and Hanzala bin Jandla Khazai, who was Abu Muhammad's companion, was fighting while swinging his sword and also reciting a poem again and again. The accursed Abu al-Ziyag also came in front of him and started reciting a poem. Abu al-Aswad Dalmi got very upset about this and struck Abu al-Ziyag on the head in such a way that he became helped with his long beard. Then he said this, "We are the saints of Allah, whose virtues and rights no one can deny except the bastard." When the battle started, Muhammad bin Ashas, the accursed one, had sent a young man towards the accursed Nasr bin Atba, the ruler of Andreen, to come to their aid immediately. When the battle was at its height and the Syrian army was losing, at that very moment the accursed Nasr bin Atba arrived with an army of 6,000 soldiers. In this battle, 90 young men and 12 girls were martyred, including Durrat-ul-Sadaf, Abu Muhammad, Qasim Khazai, and Wali-ul-Asr Delmi. May God have mercy on the pure and good-natured lovers. Results. Friends, here we have innumerable results and lessons of the process of Nusra. I, Sayyid Jafar Zaman Naqvi al-Bukhari, think it necessary to mention only one or two. This story of Nusra proves that women are the best source of Nusra movement. In the jihad of the Nusra of Wali-ul-Asr, men and women are equal. For the Nusra movement, even if we have to go to the people and visit from the streets of our city to another city, we should not feel shy in doing so. There are many lessons for today's women in this story. These bright stars of the path of truth have determined for us the path of the Nusra of the Imam of the age. And to all the women who will come to this world till the day of resurrection, it has been taught that nothing in the world can be an obstacle in the path of Nusra if the intention is pure. In the end, let's submit to the Imam of the age regarding the authenticity of the intention of the holy persons, so that the sacred primogenitor may show the Nasirs her sacred, happy and settled home, and fulfill every longing of their longing hearts, and at least grant them as much happiness as they forget forever the pain and woes of the sacred progenies of the Holy Prophet. Ameen. Ya Rabbul Alameen. Alhamdulillah wa shukra sahib az-zaman. Ajjalallahu farajahu.